Sean, I'm wondering if you just reflect on Alex Singleton's week and kind of seeing what you go through and the reaction from this.
Yeah, I was there. Look, there was a meeting Bo had with George, myself, Alex, his wife, and they went through everything. And at that very moment, there's more certainty or clarity now. But at that moment, it puts kind of everything in perspective relative to, our players' health, our health, and I'll let him speak on behalf of the procedure. But the news has been real positive, and he's obviously one of the important leaders of our team. He wanted to talk to the team first, and he did that at the start of the week, and he's got our full support.
Coach, how surprised, or what was your reaction when he told you he wanted to play on Thursday night?
Wow. Well, it was strictly his decision, and I think he had discussed that with the doctors, and he felt like that was going to be fine. And then immediately after, then he was going in for more tests and then eventually a surgery. That's just who he is. And our questions or comments were more of how can we help support. That's the approach that George and I took.
It sounds like coming back with Will Jordan, which went into that process.
I think just as we're into this run, having depth, we know the player really well. One of his strengths is his football IQ. He can play a lot of different spots, and I think it was we had that roster availability, so we'll see how that plays out. Mike Bandy's done a great job we wanted to make sure that during this stretch we had the depth at that position, and but exactly what you're getting from him, and that's a real good trait to have as a player. Then you can put him in these places where he can excel, and it was unusual seeing him on the opponent's sideline a few weeks back, but we're glad to have him back.
Sean, you potentially could be without some players on Sunday.
Yeah.
Just how do you feel about the depth of your team and your resilience heading into such a big game?
I think it's our league. You've heard me say that, and we've played teams earlier in the season that have been in this position. I won't get into any of the individuals, but it has to be the next man up, and we just finished a pretty good stretch. Now we'll play one game in 23 days, I believe it is. So yeah, I mean it is what it is.
Coach, is that a good thing, playing one game in 23 days with the rest? Is it going to be too much rest? Is that
well, when I say, I don't know how many games we just finished playing in a short period of time. Those are the things that when I was, you can't control those things. So I think, I think you normally look for a bye in the middle of the season somewhere. Sometimes you get an early one. I think last year we had the last weekend of buys. You can't control that. The things that I look at when the schedule comes out are just travel. Monday night, Cincinnati, Philly. Those are the things you start to pay attention to and how you want to handle them.
Sean, are you guys still evaluating IR potential for JK?
Yeah, nothing's been decided yet, and at some point, there'll be more clarity with him and some of these other players.
I always appreciate how you look at numbers. Bo Nix is arguably the best quarterback in the league in the fourth quarter. first 3 quarters, he ranks near the bottom of a lot of stats. How do you see?
Listen.
And what is the key? I guess.
No,
a little bit.
Well, look, I think it's our jobs, to offensively put ourselves in a position of starting faster. And when I discussed this after the game, there aren't many times when a game's over, when you win even, where you're fully satisfied. That there's something bugging you, there's something, and certainly, getting that balance, and the time of possession also to help our defense. And so I like that this year we're doing better in these one-score games. And I think you gained some confidence. And if you tried to pick when did that turn, you might look at Philly. But to go where we want to go, there has to be improvement, and certainly we understand that.
Can you make it easier for him?
Well, I think it's not just it's not Bo. I mean, I think it's part of the whole process offensively, and constantly in our game planning this week. Certainly opponents vary what they do scheme-wise. This is a pressure team, and so our job each week, we're always looking to find easy completions. When I look at the touchdown reel on Mondays, I've said this to you before, sometimes you'd look at a play and you'd just say, player, he went up, made a great play. And then sometimes someone's wide open and you click that button, you save it, and that was scheme. And so we're constantly looking at, how can we find, those throws that that fit the scheme and the defense you're attacking. Obviously, the penalties, we've got to, we're doing a great job of not taking sacks, but when we're all of a sudden, 1st and 20, we've got to eliminate those.
When you play a game against the reigning division champs, and obviously they've won many years in a row,
yeah.
Do you address that the stakes of the game with the team?
Well, I think it's a good question. Look, the players are aware of division games, and certainly there's great respect for a team that's had the staying power that they've had. So, you've worked hard to put yourself in a position to play a game like this at home. We'll play in bigger games. I say that all the time. We're going to play in bigger games, but this is the next one, and this is a team that's playing really well right now. You can see that. So, we're going to have to be on point.
Sean, have you found constants over the offense?
Say it again.
Have you found constants over the years in terms of what gets an offense in rhythm early in a game, or does that change?
It can change. It can change based on, are you playing a man-to-man defense, or are you playing a zone defense? And it can change based on your personnel, and so, as you look at every one of your play in the offensive line, man is doing a good job. Throck's doing a good job at guard, and then you start identifying like, what are the things that these players do best, and then we're always looking at, all right, how do we put them in those positions?
Have you felt like you've had a good sense of, even if it hasn't always worked, of like what early in a game should get your?
Yeah, and there's times where, like, look, I can't recall the first series of the Cowboys game. I think a lot of people felt like the route was off, and it was just an errant throw, and that can happen sometimes. But certainly, when you put together those opening plays, there's a rhyme and reason as to what you're doing. How are they going to play certain personnel groupings? This team plays a lot of nickel. and they'll play base, and then, well, are they going to play base to this personnel? And so you want to find that out early in the game, so you understand when you put that personnel on the field, you're planning on getting one or the other, and the defenses become different.
Sean, what is your confidence level now in R.J. Harvey, and if he needs to have more carries, you think he's ready?
Yeah, listen, he was, when we drafted him, it was his running skill set, and man, he had a lot of touches. I was just kidding with him earlier. Then you have experience in a guy like Jaleel, who's explosive and has been chomping at the bit, and so I think sometimes players are not held back, but when you're watching Pat Bryant grow right in front of our eyes, and you're starting to see that with RJ, and obviously he'll have more opportunities here in this game. So he's built. When you see his frame, he's built to last, and that's important.
Sean, I asked Tillman after another good return if he'd play tight end, if given the chance. He said he has tight end in his background. Is there ever any thought of a guy that said, obviously athletic and can do that?
We always look at our defensive personnel relative to like a goal line full, those kind of things. Some teams maybe don't carry a fullback, so they use a defensive tackle or. But yeah, you pay attention to. I think you got to block them all for him to score, though. But listen. It's been fun to watch.
Coach, you've talked about how winning is contagious. When you've built an appetite for winning, how do you continue to motivate the guys to be even more hungry to continue?
Well, I think it becomes addictive a little bit. Like, there's nothing like it, and then the alternative, when you spend the hours you do in the practice, one of the toughest things to do is come back in Monday and then pull your drawers up and get ready. It starts with the right type of DNA that you're bringing in. You're bringing in these guys with grit, toughness. Football IQ is important, and generally speaking, those are hard-weathered players that can withstand the storms that come in our league, and they come every season. Pick a team, pick a Super Bowl team any of the years. There's storms, and you generally fare better. So when everyone asks or talks about culture, or I speak on culture, it starts with the procurement of the right players. It really does. And that means sometimes in the draft you pass on someone that you're like, but in the long term it's gonna serve you well.
Troy Franklin has led you guys pretty comfortably in targets the last few weeks. Is that more a function to you of his development in this offense, or what?
Yeah, I think he's getting more snaps, and one of the things that he can do well is transition. And a lot of teams are using this turbo motion. He's explosive. It's one thing to say run fast sideways and then make a left-hand turn and then run a route. And so it used to be just turbo. Now we got a name after each. I mean, he can bend and transition, and it's a little bit like last year. And remember in training camp, we see the progression that we saw, kind of like Mims a year ago, and I think we're seeing in a real good way that year two for him.
I feel like defenses are keying more in on Cortland.
We get some Cortland double. Philly near the end of the game, man, we had a play we liked, and shoot the safety went right to him, and we ended up throwing it away. So a lot of it depends on the defensive coordinator, and Steve's done this long enough. He'll take away or try to take away your targets in certain situations. Last week we got some safety lean, and so when you're looking at the pictures, you're discussing the coverage, and a handful of it was lean 14, and they were still playing man, and so then you got to make some hay, either opposite of that, or you got to move 14 and put him in positions where it's a little bit more difficult to do that. If you just put him at X, you can easily remove a split end, but if he moves, if he jets, if they're matching, some teams match corners. So we've had a few of those, and then some teams are right and left, and so yeah, I think a lot of it's depending on the defensive coordinator, and it may be red zone or it may be third down, but we've certainly seen it.
Sean, how different do the Chiefs look on either side of the ball from last year, previous years, to this year?
Man, they've been so consistent. And start with Steve Spags. There's been players in and out of that defense, and he'll have new packages. They're very detailed in their assignment. They're outstanding with their technique. They give you a lot of looks, a lot of pressure looks, a lot of fire zone looks, and we'll play cover zero, maybe, a tick more than some people. So they're aggressive. Their numbers are fantastic. We looked at, I don't know how many trips in the red zone they've had to defend, so they're playing really good complementary football. I asked Rizzy, what's the punt return tape look like? And he's like, well, all the punts are going in. That means offensively they've taken the ball from their end, and certainly with the way the kickoff rule is. So I think they're playing it as well. And I think, having 4 come back, has really helped. He's been something. So listen, there's a reason this team has won for a long period of time, and it's talent, it's coaching, it's a program, it's a GM, it's ownership, and that's where we're aspiring to go.